You want to build a WordPress site in 2026 that's modern, fast, professional, without coding and without drowning in settings you can't make sense of? Then stick with me because we're going to do it all together and take advantage of the latest new features, starting with artificial intelligence, now built directly into WordPress. Hi everyone! In this video, we build a complete WordPress site from start to finish, from the domain name all the way to getting indexed on Google. The goal isn't just to install WordPress, but for you to walk away with a real site, clear, fast, pleasant on mobile, ready for search engine optimization. In short, a tool that brings you customers, not an empty shell. For the example, I'm going to set up a fictional site, paintstudio.net, the site of a house painter. I picked a tradesperson because it's the most telling case. You have to present services, reassure, show completed work, and above all, collect quote requests. But everything we're going to cover works just as well for a restaurant, a photographer, a coach, an association, or a shop. You simply swap in your own trade. On the version side, we're working on WordPress 7.0, released a few weeks ago, whose big new feature is precisely this built-in AI. I devoted an entire video to this update on LWS's main French channel. We'll start with the foundations: the choice of tool, hosting, the domain name at LWS, the professional email address, and the WordPress installation. Then we fill the site, the pages, the menu, and the design. After that, we make it truly effective: SEO, form, emails, mobile, speed, security. And we finish with the essentials: GDPR, legal pages, testing, going live on Google, and the Google Business Profile. Don't panic. I'll show you how to do everything easily. First, 30 seconds to place the tool. Basically, there are three families. Frameworks like React or Laravel, powerful, but it's pure code, so we forget about them. All-in-one solutions like Wix or Squarespace. Simple at first, but with a monthly subscription and paid options that pile up, and you stay a tenant of the platform, stuck the moment you want to push SEO or change hosts. And then there are CMSs, including WordPress. You control everything without coding: pages, articles, images, menus, extensions, and above all, you're at home, the owner. No wonder it powers more than 40% of the world's websites. One thing all the same: don't confuse WordPress.org and WordPress.com. The .org is the free and complete WordPress, the one you install on your own hosting. The .com is a more closed platform, where, depending on the plan, key functions like extensions are restricted. We avoid it. Concretely, to put a site online, you need three things: a domain name, for example, paintstudio.net, hosting to store the site, and WordPress to manage the content. In this video, I go through LWS because everything is gathered in one place and at the best price. One-click WordPress installation, management via the WordPress manager, professional email addresses, SSL certificate included, backups, cloning, staging, and optimization tools. It saves us from juggling 10 different tools. On LWS, you choose your plan based on your real needs. For a brochure site or a local business, an entry-level plan is enough. If you want to host several sites, set up a store, or anticipate traffic, you move up the range. You can always upgrade later with no extra fees. I click on Order. Then we choose the duration. 1 year is a good compromise to start with. Next comes the domain name, which is the address of your site. It should be short, clear, easy to say out loud, and consistent with your business. I search for paintstudio.net. You can also find ideas with the AI generator. If it's available, perfect. If it's taken, don't force a weird spelling. Try a variation or add your city. At LWS, you have more than 300 domain extensions available. If your customers are mostly local, a local extension reassures them. The .com gives a broader image. And if you want to protect your brand, you can register both and redirect one to the other, if they're both available. Before validating, I add the code WP2026 to get 15% off. There we go, good to grab. LWS has excellent value for money, and it's a certified sovereign French company. I create my LWS account or I log in. A tip if you're building a site for a client: check the domain name holder carefully. Legally, the declared holder is the owner of the domain. So for a client site,
The domain must be in their name, not yours. That avoids conflicts the day you go your separate ways. We finish the order and meet back in the LWS panel client area. The hosting is active within a few minutes. I manage my hosting plan linked to the Paint Studio domain. The domain name can take up to 24 hours to propagate everywhere. That's normal. In the meantime, we can already move forward. Even before installing WordPress, I advise you to create right away an email address linked to your domain. Something like contact@paintstudio.net. It seems trivial, but it's strategic. This address will be used for everything: administration, forms, quotes, notifications, and later, the newsletter. And above all, it looks serious. Receiving a quote from contact@paintstudio.net inspires trust. Receiving it from paintstudio773@gmail.com, a little less. I create a standard email offered with my hosting. Contact@paintstudio.net. I choose or generate the password. Save it somewhere. The mailbox will be 2 gigabytes, but you can, if needed, order a bigger one.
And if you don't want one more inbox to check, connect it to Gmail, Outlook, or your usual app. Or forward everything to your personal inbox. You get the benefit of the professional address without changing your habits. I'm going to create a classic mailbox myself. Create. Now we install WordPress. In the LWS panel, I go to the Application Auto Installer. LWS offers several options: a WordPress site generated with the help of AI, a classic WordPress, a WooCommerce store, or a WordPress with various pre-installed plugins. I choose the AI-assisted generation. We start from an already structured base: pages, sections, texts, but it's completely optional. You can install a classic WordPress, choose a light and block-compatible theme like Astra or Cadence, import a free starter template, and you'll arrive at the same place. The AI generator is, by the way, based on Astra. Either way, the mindset is the same. The AI lays down the first structure. You make the site. I select the domain on which to install WordPress. Here, paintstudio.net. For a main site, I install at the root, so directly on the domain. But I could have put it in a folder after the slash or in a subdomain. For example, mysite.paintstudio.net. For the administrator account, 2 rules to never neglect. First, never use admin as your username. It's the first word tested by the bots that attack sites. Second, a long and unique password, ideally stored in a password manager. For the admin email address, I put contact@paintstudio.net, the one we just created. And I validate. In a few seconds, WordPress is installed. Let's see how to manage it. On LWS, the WordPress Manager is your control tower. It lets you manage your site without necessarily opening the WordPress administration every time. See your installations, log in with one click, manage extensions and themes, run updates, backup, restore. Before every major change, the golden reflex is a full backup. You can also clone your site or create a staging environment. Staging is a copy of your site that you can break completely without consequences. Want to test a big update or a new extension? You do it on the staging site, and your real site doesn't move. That's exactly what I recommend the moment you have a client site or a store. There, I log into WordPress with one click. If you don't have the manager handy, to get into the administration of a WordPress site, you simply add /wp-admin after your domain. So here, paintstudio.net/wp-admin. You enter the username and password created at installation. It's the front door of your site, and we'll see at the end how to protect it by changing it. Since we chose the installation with AI generation, we don't land directly on the dashboard. I fill in the name of the site, Paint Studio, and the sector, House Painter. I'll choose the site's language. Mine will be in English.
On the features side, check the goals that truly match your business.
For a painter, I check offer services, generate leads, and build brand trust, I think. If you plan to publish advice, add publish blogs. The other field is optional. Each checked goal steers the generated content. You can always change your mind afterward. Next, tell us more about your business. The more precise your description, the better the result. Instead of writing just house painter, write rather painting contractor specializing in interior and exterior painting, wall restoration, decorative finishes, and facade refinishing for homeowners and businesses. Once your description is entered, click on Improve with AI to enrich it and find more things to say. And if you want to go further, open the Advanced menu. There you can add targeted keywords between 5 and 10. For example, interior painting, facade refinishing, decorative finishes. The tool even suggests some automatically based on your business. You can also choose the tone of the generated content: professional, friendly, engaging, persuasive. For a tradesperson, I recommend professional or engaging. It gives content that inspires trust without sounding too corporate. Next, I add my company's contact details: email, phone number, address, social media. In a real project, you put real info. It's essential for credibility and for local SEO. Next, for the images, you can take the ones the tool suggests, but your own photos will always be better. For a painter, nothing beats a glimpse of renovated rooms, a repainted facade, a beautiful finishing detail. This kind of image reassures far more than a stock photo that looks too artificial. I selected about 15 as recommended. Next, several site templates are generated automatically. You can choose one compatible with the native WordPress block editor or with Elementor, depending on your preference. For the sake of simplicity, lightness, and compatibility, I go with the default editor. You can sort the templates by Premium or by Newest. These new buttons are quite handy. By clicking on Shuffle Colors, I scroll through different palettes to get an idea before choosing mine at the next step. I choose a template. Don't look for perfection either. Take the one that best fits the desired mood. We'll change everything afterward: texts, images, colors, fonts, blocks. I'll choose this one. If you have a logo, import it. Otherwise, wait for me to show you how just after. I choose a pair of fonts that will be applied everywhere, and a color palette. Beware, especially when you're a painter. You want to put in lots of colors, but 2 or 3 are enough. A site isn't a color chart. Better to draw the eye to your work than to the site itself. By clicking on these icons, you can see how the site will look on a tablet or a phone. It's already well handled. Continue. Here, we already have the features that match the goals checked earlier: the blog, the page builder, and the contact form. On the plugin side, Spectra and Sure Forms will be installed automatically, and we keep them. They're light and well integrated into Gutenberg. On the other hand, I uncheck SEO. It would install SureRank, but I'd like to use a different SEO tool a bit further into the tutorial. We avoid ending up with 2 extensions that do the same job. For e-commerce, the tool suggests SureCart, modern and simple for selling digital products, services, or subscriptions. The other big solution is WooCommerce, the WordPress e-commerce reference, more complete. But we don't need it just yet. We'll look at that later in the video if you want to add a store. Click on Start Building. The generation is launched. The AI produces a first version with pages, content, images, and a structure. It's done. You can go visit your site or click on Finish Setup. There you have a Getting Started checklist: title and tagline, pages, form. It's a good reminder. We're going to handle these points and more in detail throughout the video. Here we are in the dashboard. If you've already used WordPress, you won't feel lost, but the interface has been modernized recently with WordPress 7. First of all, I'll give you a navigation tip that I really like, also arrived with 7.
The command palette. On Windows, you do Control-K, on Mac, Command-K. A search bar opens, and you can jump straight to a page, a post, the editor, a setting, without digging through the menus. When you build a complete site and you spend your time going from one screen to another, it saves you endless back and forth. Get into the habit right now. Before touching the design, we check that the site is properly accessible in HTTPS. In the address bar, you should see a secure mention or a small padlock. SSL is what allows the HTTPS to be displayed and encrypts the information exchanged between the visitor and your site. If your browser shows not secure, it's probably that the SSL certificate isn't active yet, or that it hasn't been taken into account yet. It's important because SSL reassures visitors, protects the data sent through your site, for example in a form, and it's also a standard expected by Google. Without HTTPS, your site starts off with a real handicap. At LWS, the certificate is included and already activated by default. You check its status in your client area, under the SSL section. Sometimes you just have to wait a bit, especially if the domain was just created. It doesn't stop you from continuing. A professional site needs a clear visual identity. If you already have a logo, ideally prepare 3 versions. One in color, one in white for dark backgrounds, and an icon version for the favicon, that little image you see in the browser tab. Favor a PNG with a transparent background.
If you don't have a logo, we won't stay stuck. We leave it as is, or we make one quickly while waiting for a designer. I use Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop if I know my way around a bit, or a free tool like Adobe Express, Canva, ChatGPT. On Adobe Express, here I have a Logo Maker feature. I enter the name of my company, Paint Studio. Add a tagline if you have one. Choose an appropriate icon, a brush or roller, for example. All that's left is to customize the colors, font. I'll let you play with the tools. You can also ask an AI like ChatGPT to generate the logo for you. I even gave it a screenshot of my site to get the right colors. Once the provisional logo is done, there may be 1 or 2 tweaks to make. I download the image. There we have a properly transparent background, but that's not always the case. If yours comes out with a solid background, sites like iloveimg.com let you remove it in one click here. And if, like me, you have big margins around the logo, you can crop them out with this tool. Otherwise, the logo ends up tiny in the menu. Like this. I download. I also need the roller icon on its own for the favicon. I crop again. There. I also prepare a white version for the dark background of the header so the logo stands out well. And we go back into WordPress. I click on Customize. Then Site Identity, or the site editor depending on your theme. First, the site icon is the favicon we talked about. I drag it in. Select. You can clearly see that the icon is now visible in the Browser tab. Now, let's go to the Site Title and Logo Settings section. There you can import your logo. I drag in the logo in the light version. Don't hesitate to add alternative text. It's a short description of the icon or photo, read by Google and by visually impaired people who use a screen reader. No cropping. The logo is very small. We fix that in logo width by sliding the selector. The text next to it is redundant. I make it invisible in Site Title Visibility. On tablet and mobile too. I publish my changes by clicking on the Publish button. The message about the Astra Pro theme, we don't care, there's no need for it. There are other possible edits in this spot, like the button to the right of the page menu. Let's close that and go back to the WordPress dashboard. Before creating the pages, we set up a few basics that avoid regrets later. First, in Settings, Permalinks.
I check that post name is indeed selected. It gives clean addresses, something like paintstudio.net/thepage, instead of a URL with a date or numbers. It's clearer for the visitor and better for SEO. Do it now. If you change the structure once the site is filled in, you risk breaking your links. Next, in Settings, General.
I check the site title, the tagline, the language, the time zone, and the administration email address. Go to Users, Profile. An often forgotten setting is the publicly displayed name. For your display name, choose a proper name or the company name, rather than your administrator login username. And you select it here. Because WordPress can show the author of articles, and showing your username is like handing over half of your login credentials to the curious. There, it's good, it's different. Update. If there are several of you, add users with the right role in Users, Add User. An administrator account can do everything. An editor manages content. The author publishes their own articles. A contributor proposes drafts. The common sense rule: you don't give the administrator role to someone who doesn't need it. Last point not to skip: the comments. By default, WordPress allows them pretty much everywhere, including on your pages, and on a brochure site, that's not necessarily useful. You uncheck Allow people to submit comments on new posts and Allow link notifications from other blogs on new posts. And check Comment must be manually approved. That way, if you open a blog later, nothing shows up without your approval. And if you keep a blog open to comments, activate Akismet. It will avoid most spam. Save. Before building the pages, we're going to plug an AI assistant directly into the editor to help write on a daily basis. Careful, nothing to do with the generator we use to create the site. It's the occasion to show you one of the big new features of WordPress 7 in Settings, Connectors. All your API keys and connection info are saved here and shared between extensions. You configure them once, and you reuse them everywhere. You find 3 providers ready to plug in, each with an Install button: Anthropic to generate text with Claude, Google for text and images with Gemini and Imagen, and OpenAI for text and images with GPT and DALL-E. On its own, the connector does nothing visible. To get concrete buttons in the editor, you need an extension that relies on this AI client. WordPress recommends some directly on this page. Install it. To plug all this in, you need an API key from the provider you choose. You create an account on its platform, for example, Anthropic's for Claude. I click on Create Key. I name it. Add. I copy it. I go back into Connectors. I paste my key. I also connected Google and OpenAI to show you. The WordPress extension is free, but the AI usage is billed by the provider on a pay-as-you-go basis. For a small site, it stays at a few cents per generation. Let's take a tour of the AI extension's features. There, I activate the AI. Then I check the ones I want. I activate everything myself for the example. Enable all. Same. Depending on what you activate, you'll see AI buttons appear directly in the editor. You may see a message asking you to approve access to the connectors for certain plugins. Click on Review Requests and Approve. Without that, the generation buttons won't work. We'll talk later about the page editor, but I'll quickly show you what the WordPress AI extension can offer. Careful, the Ask AI button you see in the editor is the AI of the Spectra plugin in the Pro version. We ignore it. Our extension's functions are elsewhere. First, we have this button that appeared. It lets you edit a text, shorten it, lengthen it, or rephrase it. I lengthen. It worked. I accept.
You have title generation based on its content, the writing of alternative text on images.
That sounds right.
This button generates proofreading notes block by block that analyze readability, grammar, and SEO. This button writes a summary. There, I have this new text block. When I want to edit an image, there are new buttons. All these ones. Let's say I wanted to turn the wall behind into brown. It works! We have other built-in tools like the generation of meta descriptions in the SEO referencing plugins. We'll talk about that again. All of this is completely optional. You can install nothing, open Claude, ChatGPT, or Gemini in a tab on the side, write your text, and paste it into WordPress. No key to manage, often free. For a brochure site that you fill in once, it's often enough. The AI doesn't know your experience, your real job sites, your guarantees, your customer reviews. Replace the generalities with concrete details and add your real service area. A 100% AI text left as is. You spot it in 3 seconds and it scares off serious customers. Let's look at the pages created by the generator. Home, About, Services, Blog, and Contact. Good base. But for a tradesperson, the important page that's missing is the Work page. We'll create it a bit further on. Find all your pages in the Pages section.
By the way, if a page name doesn't suit you, you can change it easily. With Quick Edit, you rename the page and erase the old slug, and the URL updates on its own. Here, Services works fine for me, so I keep it as is.
Head to Settings, then Reading. I check that the home page is indeed a static page. I have Home. And that the Post page points to Blog. Everything is okay. Important detail: as long as the site is under construction, check the option that asks search engines not to index it. Perfect for not showing an unfinished site. But you'll have to uncheck it at the end. Otherwise, your site stays invisible on Google for months. We'll come back to it at the last step. Keep it in mind. I save. Now, I go back to my pages. We tackle the customization with Gutenberg, WordPress's native editor. You just have to click on the edit link of a page, the home page to start with. For a long time, we recommended Elementor straight away because Gutenberg was limited.
Elementor is still very good, especially for advanced layouts, and you can use it if you prefer. But in 2026, Gutenberg has matured a lot. With blocks, patterns, global styles, responsive, that is, customizing the site's display depending on the screen size, you make a modern site without adding a heavy builder. And since it's integrated into WordPress, it's lighter and potentially more durable over time. The principle is that everything is a block. A heading, a paragraph, an image, each one is a block, and columns and groups can bundle several of them. To edit a text, I click on it and I replace it. To add an element, I click on the little plus and I look for the desired block. On the right, I have all the settings of the selected block: size, colors, margins, texts, spacing, alignment, responsive options. That's where most of the customization happens. Click here to use the list view. It shows the whole structure of the page, the sections, the columns, the headings, the images. As soon as a page gets long, it's 10 times easier to select or move a block. The home page is the most important page of the site. In a few seconds, it has to answer 3 questions. Who are you? What do you offer? And why trust you? For a painter, a simple and effective structure is a banner with a clear title and a button toward the quote. It's good there. A services section here. A section with the work. That one will need to be added. A few customer reviews, guarantees, and a contact reminder at the bottom. I start with the banner. The main title must be an H1. It's the most important title, the level 1 heading. There's only one per page.
In the block options, in the content section, I can check the heading level. The other H levels, you can have several in the page, well structured. Instead of a "Welcome to our site," which says nothing, I write something useful. There it looks a bit big, but in the Styles tab on the right, I can change the size of the typography. There. And if you're targeting a specific area, be even clearer, something like "House painter in Chicago and the surrounding area." It's crystal clear for the visitor, and excellent for local SEO. You just swap in your city. Below, we could add a "See Our Work" button. For that, just drag a button block onto the page and edit its text. Avoid vague buttons like "Click here." A button must announce what's going to happen.
It's a little too far from the block above it. So I open the block settings. In the Styles tab, I reduce the bottom padding by half.
We check how it looks on mobile quickly. We don't have a work page yet, but I already know the link I'm going to give it, so I'll take the opportunity to add the link on the button right now before forgetting. I copy and paste the URL, and I add "work."
Replace, if you wish, the photo of the main image with a real photo of one of your job sites. Click on Change Image. I insert this photo generated with ChatGPT. It's temporary while waiting for a real one. This is the moment to use the AI extension. I can have it generate the image's alternative text in one click. I check that it describes the photo well, and I correct if needed. There's even my logo on his t-shirt. We don't worry yet about the weight of the images, we'll see that later, because we have a tool that's going to handle it automatically. The best way to build fast and clean is patterns. In other words, ready-made sections. I click on the plus, Patterns tab. And I can insert a banner, a services grid, a call to action, testimonials, a gallery, an FAQ, a footer. WordPress 7 has, by the way, made them more pleasant to handle. You insert by dragging, for example. Click on Edit Pattern. Replace the content directly in the block, and find other options in the right panel, like the number of columns, or the spacing of the blocks. When it's done, exit the pattern. I'm going to delete this pattern, it was for the example. I have a section I'd like to be able to reuse, the one with my services. I select the group of blocks and I choose Create Pattern. I give it a name. And I decide whether it's synced or not. Add. Think of a synced pattern as a single original. You edit it in one place, it copies everywhere. Ideal for an identical call to action on several pages. You change the phone number once, it changes everywhere. A non-synced section is more like a stamp. It gives you a starting point, but then each copy lives its own life. Learn to juggle between the two, and you build twice as fast. I'm going to tidy this button into the block, by the way. Right now it's separate. I'm going back to undo my pattern. If I drag my button block into my solutions block, it puts it in a column, which wouldn't work. I'm canceling. So I select both and group them together. I'm recreating the pattern. I name it, add.
Here we have a theme based on Astra with the Spectra plugin that adds blocks to the Gutenberg editor. So we also have access to this design library. There are lots of blocks already adapted to my style. I'll let you explore, there's a bit of everything. In the blocks, Spectra adds all the ones in this section. All the blue icons, in fact. Counter, FAQ, reviews, etc. And then you have the native WordPress elements. The latest update also added a handy icon block to illustrate services without installing an extension just for that. I add it to show you. It's not necessarily the best spot to insert an icon, but oh well. Click on it. And there you have a small library that will surely grow over time. Edit its parameters like its size on the right. But still, the icon block added by Spectra has more choices than that one. I undo my last actions. Save your site's pages regularly. Next, we're going to go back to the Pages section. I leave the home page. Pages.
We're going to create the work page. It's the most convincing one for a tradesperson. Before requesting a quote, people want to see your finishes and your before-afters. To keep the same style and save time, I start from the About page. I open About in another tab. I click Add Page, which I name My Work, so that it creates the same link I put on the Work button on my homepage. Publish. I do have Work. All that's left is to fill the page. I go to the About page that's in the other tab. I switch to List View. And I select all the blocks I want to add to my new page. You can copy everything at once. On your new page, paste your blocks. Right-click Paste or Control-V. I make the page title invisible, and I rename the text of the banner. Put whatever you want. I'm going to put my company name back in it. I'm going to keep only this banner, and the call to action block toward the quote request at the bottom. I delete the blocks of the group in the middle from the list view. Delete. I kept the container that held them to add a new block directly from the plus. The heart of the page is the gallery. Either you use the WordPress gallery block, the Spectra one, or a pattern or block from the design library at the top. For a simple gallery, I take the basic one. I just have to upload my photos in a batch and it's done. I put them in this folder. I take everything. Open. You can play a bit with the display. Select the entire gallery block. Open the settings on the right. You can move an image by dragging and dropping it in the list. In the second tab, set the columns. I leave the cropping. I can optionally set all the thumbnails to square or change the spacing. I'm going to show you the difference between the various gallery blocks. I'll set it up and show you. The WordPress gallery we've seen, there are the photos. You can't click on them. Then, the Spectra gallery block is pretty much the same thing, but you can add captions when you hover the mouse. In its settings, you can change the display of this gallery by selecting Masonry, notably. There's still the columns option. And if you activate Lightbox mode, you'll be able to click on each photo to see it large. It even acts as a slideshow, perfect for seeing the quality of the finishes. In the WordPress patterns, I found a section that's a bit of a gallery. And in the Spectra design library, this one wasn't bad either. I'm only going to keep this gallery personally. There. I edited the title. And I also add a little description. There's a bit too much spacing. I reduce it a little. For each image, fill in the alternative text in this field. Write or I generate something more descriptive. I took a little break to add alternative text and caption text for each of my photos. I update the gallery. You see, the caption is properly changed. To go further, you can add a dynamic pattern. Patterns. My patterns. I had saved this one with my services. At the very bottom, I have my call to action with a button toward the contact and quote page. It's a synced pattern too. I save. The About page is often underestimated, and it's a shame because many visitors want to know who's behind the site before entrusting you with a job. Its role is to reassure. It can explain who you are since when you've existed, your approach, who you're aimed at, and how you work concretely. If you have a photo of yourself, your team, your vehicle, add it. A real face inspires far more trust than a stock photo. Me, I'm going to add photos of the Paint Studio team. I'll take a template from the library. There's a team section. It depends how many of you there are. I'll take a 4-person one. Insert. All that's left is to replace the photos and texts. I just did it to go faster. Nothing new beyond what I've already shown. This is Julian. I move this team block up above the contact block by clicking on the shortcut arrow here. I save. And I check my page. Let's say it's good. To work on your SEO over the long term, the blog is a good weapon, on the condition that you don't publish just to publish. A good article answers a real question from your audience. For Paint Studio, it can be, which paint to choose for a damp room? How to prep a wall before painting? Or matte, satin, or gloss? Which finish to choose? These are questions people really type in, and that you can answer better than anyone. You can customize the display of the blog on this page by clicking on Customize, and by going to the section called Post Types, Blog/Archive. In the layout, you choose whether you want to display your articles one after another, more or less compact. I prefer the default display. You have several display options afterward. I'll let you browse them. Publish your changes and close these settings. In the WordPress dashboard, I go to Posts. There are several by default. Either you add a new one or you edit one already there. The interface of Posts is almost the same as in classic pages, except that you choose the thumbnail of your article there. You find your different blocks to build the page, even if there you'll mostly use headings, paragraphs, and image blocks, maybe tables to compare various things. I wrote the subject, Which Paint to Choose to Renovate a Room in 2026, a clear title. Then we make a structure in H2. Understand how the room is used, choose the right finish, etc. You don't choose a heading level for its style, you can change it. We want a real structure. The AI can help you rough out the outline, but it's your expertise that makes the value. If you publish the same generated article as everyone else, your content carries no weight, neither for readers nor for search engines like Google. Add your field advice, your mistakes to avoid, your recommendations. In the H2s, you can put H3 subparts. In the H3s, H4s, etc.
But we often stop at H2 or H3, especially for short articles. Add a few photos, and if you've linked an AI connector, you can even generate some on the fly. You just have to give some directions. Once everything is written, why not add a little summary at the end? Generated automatically or not? Generate summary. It put it at the very top for me, but I easily drag it to the bottom from the list view. Then add a featured image with its alternative text. Choose an article category. I add a new one. It'll be painting. Add. Done. Publish or save the article. I take a look at how it turns out. It's missing a link or button toward my company pages. Since we're getting visits thanks to the blog, we might as well be able to convert them into customers. I add a button. Discover Paint Studio's services. The button will go to my Our Services page. To open in a new tab or not. I'd also like to change the article's link. There, it's still the URL of the old one. I delete the slug. I save. There, I have a correct address. And a button that works. Before moving on to the contact page, I'd like to edit my header there. It's the top part of the site. I want to add the work page I created earlier. Go to the WordPress dashboard.
In Appearance, Menus. You have the different links present in the menus. The footer is the bottom of the page, and we tend to neglect it wrongly. We're going to improve it just after. For now, select the main menu to edit. First, I check the box for My Work page, and I add it to the menu. Not as the last link, I move it up to put it after My Services. About, I'd see it still after that. I move it.
If I want to, I can easily rename my pages.
If you have a lot of different services or projects, you can create a submenu. You can also add articles or custom links. For my site, what I put will be enough. Save the menu. It's not only there that you can edit the menu. In Customize, click on the pencil next to the menu. In the diagram at the bottom, you see the Structure, List of Menu Links button. You could add elements above or below the existing header. Let's take a look at the menu on tablet and mobile. Depending on the theme, you can customize the panel that opens. The priority is clarity, well-spaced links that are easy to tap with a finger.
If the logo doesn't look like the right size on smaller screens, adjust it. When a phone icon appears next to a setting, it means the change will only apply to that screen size. I'll adjust the size on the tablet. There. Then on the smartphone.
At the footer level, edit it as you wish. Choose the number of columns and the layout.
And click on the widgets to add what you want in the columns. Navigation menu links, for example. There's already a navigation block here, but no footer menu exists yet. Only my main menu. So I quickly create a dedicated footer menu. I check the box. I enter a menu name. Next, add items. For now, I just add a couple of links. I'll come back later to add the privacy policy and cookie pages once they exist. Then I head back to the footer. On the right, there's a free widget column. I add a social icons block with my links of social share icons. Be sure to add the link for each media file so that it displays properly. I edited a bit more off-screen. I put the company name and other important info. When you're done, publish the new footer. We move on to the next part. Rather than editing the style of each title and each button one by one, which would be hell, we work with global customization. So at any time, you can change all the fonts at once, the size of certain titles, etc. It applies everywhere. Quick aside, if you want to add other fonts, I'll show you another new feature of WordPress 7. In Appearance, Fonts, we now have a font library that works on all themes. You can upload fonts and install Google Fonts. There are 175 of them. Let's get back to it in the global customization. For colors, same thing, it's interchangeable. The palette can be edited easily everywhere. The dynamic buttons can also be edited in bulk. By adding rounded corners, for example. They need to be clearly visible and well contrasted. A beautiful but unreadable button is useless. Its role is to be clicked on. I save. Let's move on to the contact page. It must make people want to take action. It can contain a form, an email address, a phone, a physical address if it's useful, the hours, etc. Since we kept SureForms at installation, the form is already in place. But you always have the choice between SureForms, Fluent Forms, WP Forms, or Contact Form 7. SureForms is light, modern, and well integrated into Gutenberg. It'll do the job. You won't be able to edit it in this spot. Go to the WordPress dashboard. There's SureForms here, but also there. You'll see it's super fast to set up. Let's begin.
If you wish, you can let the AI create your form. It's free, you just have to sign up or log in with Google. It's not mandatory, but it works well. Me, I log in. Connect. SureMail is suggested to me. Light and well integrated, it lets you send emails cleanly while avoiding falling into spam as much as possible. You could also use WP Mail SMTP or Fluent SMTP. The principle is the same. For the sake of simplicity, I continue with SureMail. Next. Everything is ready. We'll be able to create our form. Me, I'm going to generate it with AI. I want a quote request and contact form for a house painting company with name, phone, city of the job site, type of work, approximate surface area, desired time frame, message. Generate. We wait a few seconds. The AI gives me a base. I check the fields. For the GDPR consent, SureForms has a dedicated block, GDPR agreement. I take it rather than a simple checkbox because it's designed for that. It's already required and unchecked by default, which is what we need. I just customize its text. For example, I agree that this information may be used to respond to my request in accordance with the privacy policy. And I slip in a link to that policy. We don't have the page yet. We'll create it later. All the fields marked with a red star are required to fill in. I don't necessarily need to make everything required. I deactivate a few. The more info you ask for, the fewer people fill it in. In the type of work, you can edit the options and add some, or even allow several to be checked.
Build your form using the predefined fields without overloading it either. Some options are only in SureForms Premium, but not many people need them. I have all the fields I need. Let's move on to the form settings. Starting with email notifications. Edit or add notifications to additional people. By default, emails are sent to the email we put at the WordPress installation. There they arrive at contact@paintstudio.net. If you reply to the received request email, your reply goes to your own address, not to the client. To fix this, go to the Reply To field. Insert the appropriate tag. That way, when you click Reply, it replies directly to the client. So remember to keep an email field in your form, otherwise you have no address to reply to. In the next section, I have a preview of the form's confirmation message. I'll leave it like this, but you can also redirect to another page. In spam protection, as the name suggests, you can add a protection that will greatly limit the number of spam contacts received. But you first have to take a trip to the global settings beforehand. We'll see that later. We don't need to go look at all the sections. In SureForms' advanced settings, I activate GDPR compliance so as not to store the visitor's IP and device, data I don't need for a quote. I also activate automatic deletion of entries after 3 months, for example, so as not to keep personal data indefinitely. Just remember to state this retention period in your privacy policy. We have everything we need. The instant form, I leave it deactivated. It serves to create a standalone page dedicated to the form, whereas we're going to integrate it directly into the contact page. I save and look at the page.
Copy the form code to put it on the contact page. Here I am on the page. I'll paste the code here.
Whoa, that doesn't look great. It's too long to be in a column. I move the form lower across the full width. The orange block, I get rid of it or I put something else in it. Like a Google Maps map, for example. I put my full address. And play with the zoom. How does it look now? It's okay. But the form, not so much. It's too wide. The simplest is to right-click on this element and click on Group. And in the block settings, you can choose a content width. Let's check. That's already better, even if the page could still be improved a bit. I thought about it a little. I changed the banner and a couple of details. I added an email field so we can get back to the person by email. The AI hadn't added it for me. I made it required. And added a title and subtitle here. That way people know my service area. It's important. If you embed a real Google Maps map, think about GDPR and cookies, because an embedded map often drops trackers. We'll talk about it later to become compliant. To keep it simple, you can even prefer a link to Google Maps rather than an embedded map. For all of this to actually arrive and not in spam, the sending has to be set up correctly. That's exactly the role of SureMail, which we installed earlier. We configure it now.
By default, WordPress sends its emails in an unreliable way, and the quote requests often end up in spam or never go out at all. That's exactly why we installed SureMail. It's going to send your emails from your real inbox, recognized and authenticated, and that changes everything for deliverability. I go into SureMail's settings, and I connect my contact@paintstudio.net inbox. Server, port, security, username, password. All this info, you received it by email when your inbox was created, and you also find it in your LWS panel. I fill in the fields, I make sure to correctly match the port and the type of encryption, and I save. Then, a step not to skip, send a test email. I go back to the site and I fill in my own form like a visitor. Then I send my request. I check that I do receive the email at contact@paintstudio.net and that the visitor sees their confirmation message. I did receive it. And when I click the reply button, I do reply to my client. Before leaving the form, we wrap up the anti-spam protection we'd set aside. Head to SureForms, Settings, then in Spam Protection. The simplest is the honeypot, an invisible trap field that catches bots without asking anything of your visitors. You activate it, and for a brochure site, that's often enough. If you want stronger protection, you add a CAPTCHA. I use Cloudflare Turnstile. It's free, nearly invisible to the visitor, and more respectful of privacy than Google's reCAPTCHA.
In another tab, I create a free Cloudflare account. I go to Protect and Connect, then Turnstile. I click Add Widget manually. I give the widget a name, and I enter my domain. Save. Create. Cloudflare gives me two keys, a site key and a secret key. I copy and paste them into SureForms, and I save. We can close Cloudflare. Careful, last step we often forget. The CAPTCHA isn't active until you've added it in the form itself. So I go back into my forms. This one. Let's go to the anti-spam protection settings. I select Turnstile, and there, it's good. It filters the vast majority of fake messages without bothering your real visitors.
Next, a step not to rush at all, mobile. Today, the majority of your visitors arrive from a smartphone, and on top of that, Google evaluates your site first in the mobile version. So a site that's gorgeous on computer but a pain on mobile, that's not enough. In the editor, I switch to tablet preview first. I check and correct if needed. There, it's missing a bit of space under the button. I open the settings, and I head to the Styles tab. In the spacing, I add padding or margin to give it air. You can see that I have the tablet icon selected, so this change is made only on this format. Then we check on a mobile. Check everything: titles, images, buttons, margins, columns, readability. The homepage title I find a bit big on this page, so I reduce it. Visit each page of your site.
On a small screen, some sections can benefit from being simplified. A large grid of work on computer can become an endless scroll on smartphone. Good news, WordPress now lets you hide or show certain blocks depending on the device. I select the entire block or the gallery. I go to the Advanced tab, and I check the box that lets me hide the block on mobile. Me, I'll leave it visible everywhere, but you know the principle now. Don't overdo it either. We don't want to create 3 different sites. Just improve the experience where it's truly useful. Now, we're going to improve the site's placement on the internet. SEO is natural referencing. That is, helping Google, and now AI engines, to understand your site and suggest it on the right searches. Now that all the content exists, we do a real optimization pass. We're not going to become number 1 by checking 3 boxes, but we're going to avoid the classic mistakes, and that already changes a lot. First point, the structure of the headings. Each page has a single H1, nice and clear. On the home page, mine is House Painter in Chicago and the surrounding area. I put the city for local SEO. I have a Chrome plugin to see a page's structure. The big sections use H2s, like the title of the block of our services. And inside an H2, I have H3s. This hierarchy is the skeleton that search engines read. Second point, internal links. Your homepage must point toward work, contact, about, and your important articles. The articles aren't mandatory, but I can put 2 of them in the footer, for example. Take care with the text of the links. No click here, but rather see our painting work. The link text helps understand the destination. Also take advantage of a very handy new feature of WordPress 7. It can be useful in our blog articles. There's a breadcrumbs block. I drag it onto my page. It shows the navigation path, with shortcuts to home, then blog, then its category and the title. It automatically reflects the hierarchy of your site. If you place it just once in the header from the site editor, it will appear everywhere. The visitor finds their bearings better, and Google as well as AI tools understand your structure better. Remember, at the moment of generation, I unchecked SEO so as not to scatter my focus at the start. It's now that we set up our SEO tool. I go to Plugins, then Add Plugin, and I search for SEO. You could take Yoast, All-in-One SEO, or SEO Press, all very serious, but I choose Rank Math because it guides me directly in the editor. I click on Install, then Activate. Rank Math offers to connect a free account. It unlocks keyword suggestions directly from Google and a few extra analysis tools. You can create your free account or click Skip if you prefer to keep it simple. Okay, I activate the free plan. Then, the setup wizard asks me a few questions. I leave it on advanced mode. No need to import the settings of an old SEO tool. My site is brand new. I ignore it. Fill in the different fields. Paint Studio is a small business site. My business type. I see there's the House Painter category that exists. Perfect. My logo for Google. I'm going to upload the classic non-white version. I drag it. Okay. You can also give a featured image for social media. It's a default image when you share a page of your site on Facebook and others. I'm going to make one for the example in the recommended size. There, I insert it. Here's what it will look like on Facebook when I post a link from my site that has no featured image. Rank Math offers to connect the Google services, Search Console, and Analytics. We'll deal with that at the end of the video. So here I click on Skip Step. We'll come back to it at the right moment.
On the sitemap, I include the images. It helps Google index them and make them appear in Google Images. I keep posts and pages. I can uncheck forms. Not very useful for them to appear in Google. I continue. In the SEO tweaks, the default settings are fine. We keep the no index so as not to index empty archives. I also leave the opening of external links in a new tab so as not to make the visitor leave the site. I save and I continue. And there, the rank math wizard is finished. The basic SEO is in place. But for a tradesperson, I advise you to go a notch further with the advanced configuration, because there are settings that truly make the difference. The role manager, I skip it. It's only useful if there are several of us managing the site. 404 and redirections, I activate them. The 404 monitor tells me when a visitor or Google lands on a non-existent page, and the redirections let me redirect it to a good page in 2 clicks. I save and I continue. And we arrive at the schema markup. Here, we define the default structured data type. For articles, I choose blog post. For pages, I put service, since a tradesperson presents services above all. And for forms, I leave none. I save. Here I am in the modules. This is where we activate or deactivate RankMath's functions. Good news! The wizard has already activated the essentials for us. Local SEO, schema, sitemap, redirections, and 404 monitoring. We don't touch them. Just check that those modules are indeed on and deactivate the ones you don't use if they're on. If your target is AI, the LLMS text module generates a file that guides models like ChatGPT toward your important content. It's not active by default, so if you want to use it, click on its switch to activate it. And you see this banner at the top that says the site is on no index. That's normal. It's our deliberate indexing block. We'll lift it at the very end. The most important for a tradesperson is local SEO. I configure it here. I'll take 2 minutes to fill it in. There.
At the top, I have organization selected, since the site represents a company. I added a description of the site, the contact email, the full address, and the opening hours. I removed Saturday and Sunday. I don't forget the phone if I want to highlight it. And at the bottom, I link my About page and my Contact page. About. Contact us. I save the changes. What I just filled in there is the schema, or structured data, a kind of identity card invisible to the visitor but read by the engines. It helps Google display rich results and AIs to cite you correctly. Now, I go around my important pages. On each one, RankMath adds its score and its dedicated panel. I first fill in the main keyword. I recommend a single one per page, local and precise. For the home page, it'll be House Painter, Chicago. In Edit Snippet, I fill in the SEO title and the meta description. The title must make people want to click while staying clear. For example, House Painter in Chicago, Paint Studio. I edited the meta description by putting in the keywords. RankMath gives you a score and concrete advice. Put it in the title, the meta, a subtitle, add an image with alternative text. Follow them when they make sense, but this score remains a guide, not an absolute truth. Don't aim for 100 out of 100 if it makes your text robotic. A useful, clear, and honest page is worth 1,000 times more than a page stuffed with keywords. I'm going to put my keyword in a few missing spots. There, I put it in some content and the alt tag of the banner image. The score is already pretty good. After that, the referencing happens over time, with reputation, with the links that point to your site, etc. And in 2026, we no longer search only on Google. More and more people ask their questions to ChatGPT, Claude, or Google's AI summaries. To have a chance of being cited, the recipe is the same as good old SEO. Clear answers, real expertise, concrete and verifiable info.
a clean structure. For example, a page that precisely answers which paint to choose for a bathroom has its chances of being picked up. A vague and generic page? No. So write to help a human decide, and you check the Google box and the AI box at the same time. My homepage already targets house painter in Chicago, so I made sure my services page aims for a neighboring but distinct keyword: painting work in Chicago. That way, my two pages don't compete with each other on Google. I followed the advice given to improve the positioning. Change the page name, link, titles, content. I also added blocks like an FAQ to add useful content. Remember to mark your important pages, like home, our services, and work, as pillar content in Rank Math.
That way, when you write an article, the tool reminds you to link to them. Your articles attract visitors, and these internal links guide them toward the pages that turn a reader into a customer. Have you optimized each main page? We continue. If you want to sell online, WordPress knows how to make a store. Ask yourself the question, do you need it? In most cases, a good brochure site with a quote request converts better than a store. Depending on your business, you can still sell consulting services, PDF guides, or gift cards. Two main solutions. WooCommerce, the WordPress e-commerce reference, very complete. And SureCart, modern and simple. I'll show you both quickly. With either one, you manage the essentials of a store: products, prices, variations, payments, shipping, taxes, cart, and order. The difference is the approach. WooCommerce runs entirely on your site and already handles all the essentials with a catalog of extensions for advanced needs. But the more you pile on, the heavier your site gets. SureCart, for its part, handles part of the work: payments, subscriptions, taxes in the cloud. Your site stays light and can better absorb traffic spikes. I won't go through the whole config here, it deserves an entire video. I've made several on the French YouTube channel, but tell me if you want one in 2026. But remember one thing, don't install a store if you don't have a use for it. A poorly configured and abandoned store makes a worse impression than a brochure site with a form that works. Let's talk speed. A slow site gives a bad first impression and scares visitors away before they've even read a word. The usual culprits are images that are too heavy, too many extensions, videos that are too big, or the absence of cache. Let's start with the images, because it's one of the biggest levers. Good news, WordPress already does part of the work on its own. When you import a photo, it automatically creates several sizes to serve the right version depending on the screen. What it doesn't do, on the other hand, is convert your photos into modern, lighter formats. The LWS WordPress extension called LWS Optimize goes further. It caches, it compresses, and above all, it automatically converts your images to WebP or AVIF. I activate it if it's not already the case, and I head to the plugin. You can already activate an optimization level to optimize several things. You can activate the options progressively from the advanced mode and check each time that the site still displays correctly. Lower down, you have image compression. Click on the conversion button. If I select the LWS API, the tool chooses the best format for each image. Also activate, if you want, automatic conversion each time you add a photo. Convert. That said, keep a bit of common sense at upload. Don't send a 50 megabyte photo to display it as a small thumbnail. There's no point cluttering things up. I'll show you how to speed up your site even more in the advanced mode. Go to Caching. The file cache is already active. You can also activate memcached and the LWS cache server cache. But if you haven't activated them in your LWS client area, it won't work. So, from the LWS panel, search for Cache and click on it. Activate. Confirm. Same for LWS Cache. I select WordPress in the site type to optimize the settings even further. Save. Another optimization lever, limit the extensions. Each one must have a real use. 3 page builders, 2 SEO extensions, and 5 performance tools. That's the recipe for conflicts and slowness. Do some cleanup. And if you want a video in the banner, watch out for the weight. A 30 meg video at the top of the page weighs down the loading. Compress it, limit the duration, forget the 4K, and use it only if it truly adds something. I like to use the free software Handbrake to compress videos. I reduce the dimensions. The number of frames per second, 20, will be enough. The quality is where I can really make the difference. And the length of the video too. I go from 17 seconds to 10. Start the compression. It's done. Let's compare the weight of the two. This reduced the video size by more than 97%. It could have been more. I import the video into my WordPress. I name it like my page. Select. I can choose the color and transparency of the colored rectangle on top to make the title stand out. Save. Here's what it gives. Finally, test the speed on mobile. It's the one that counts the most, far more than the speed on your computer on fiber, because your visitors are often on 4G out in the street. Either you go through Google PageSpeed Insights or through the LWS shortcuts to have the history. You find the page speed analysis in your LWS Optimize plugin, but also in LWS's WordPress Manager. On computer, we have the maximum score thanks to what we put in place. It's a bit harder to have as much on mobile. Scan. It's already pretty good. A WordPress site needs upkeep. Concretely, update WordPress, the extensions, and the theme. Make backups, monitor the forms, and remove what's no longer useful. A site left abandoned becomes an open door for hackers. The WordPress Manager makes all of this easier for you. Before a big update, especially on a store or a client site, back up or test first on the staging environment, even if you have free backups at LWS. Download a copy of your site from time to time. Now, the security of the connection. The /WP admin page is the #1 target of hacker bots that test thousands of passwords in a row. The good reflex is to hide this address. At LWS, you have a perfect tool for that. The LWS Hide Login extension. I install it and activate it. It lets you replace the default login address with one of your own. I put example myself.
Edit the URL. So when a bot or a curious person tries to open /WP-min, they land on an error page and don't find the front door to your site, which is on /example. Just remember it well, because that's where you'll log in afterward. Either way, if you go through the WordPress Manager, the connection has updated itself, and you can complete it with two-factor authentication on your admin account, so that even with your password, no one gets in without the code, and the limitation of login attempts. The fastest is a security extension like WordFence that does both. These few settings eliminate the overwhelming majority of automatic attacks. On the content side, the revisions let you go back easily if a change displeases you. To go further, I'd like to talk to you about email marketing. A newsletter keeps in touch with your visitors, but it's created cleanly and with people's consent. You never add someone to a list without their agreement. The cleanest is double opt-in. The person signs up, then confirms via an email. You're sure of the agreement and you avoid fake signups. On the tools side, you have MailPoet, Brevo, MailChimp, and others. Follow the simple setup steps.
On your site, you can add a simple sign-up form. Ask only for the email, possibly the first name. Here again, the less you ask, the more people sign up. And add a clear sentence with the possibility to unsubscribe at any time, plus a link to the privacy policy. To avoid spam, use your professional address, set up the sending correctly, avoid overly clickbait subject lines, and don't send too often. Above all, bring value. A newsletter that only sends promos gets unsubscribed from in 2 clicks. A real useful piece of advice. We remember it, and we call the tradesperson back when the need arises. It's time to talk about GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. It's the European framework, but don't skip this if you're elsewhere. Equivalent rules exist in most countries, and GDPR applies anyway as soon as your site receives European visitors. I'll point out that I'm not a lawyer, so for a complex case, get a professional opinion. For a classic site, there are 2 things to handle: legal pages, which we'll create right after, and cookies, which we settle right now. On the cookies side, the principle is simple. If your site drops non-essential cookies, you have to collect consent before they load. That's the case for a statistics tool, an advertising pixel, an embedded map like our Google Maps on the contact page, etc. To manage this, I install a consent extension. Head to Plugins, Add. I search for Cookie Yes, for example. This extension is free and complete.
Click on Connect to a new account.
I choose the free plan, which is more than enough. Check your email, follow the instructions. I then configure my banner.
I switch the language to English. I choose a layout, box or banner, depending on what you prefer, and a light or dark theme. I mainly check that the template is indeed GDPR compliant and that the Reject All button is clearly visible next to Accept All. No need to paste code by hand since we go through the plugin. Check that the Cookie Preferences link has been placed in the footer, so the visitor can come back to their choice at any time. Now I launch a scan of the site in Cookie Manager. Scan now. Cookie Yes detects the cookies and classifies them by category. As long as the visitor hasn't accepted, these cookies don't load. That's what makes us compliant. I also leave consent logging activated. The consent log. In case of an audit, that's what proves visitors did give their agreement. A word on statistics. To track visits, you can install Google Analytics 4, free, or more privacy-respecting tools like Matomo or Plausible. But a stats tool drops cookies. It too must therefore wait for the visitor's agreement before triggering. Concretely, Cookie Yes blocks it as long as no one has clicked Accept. And for Google Analytics, Cookie Yes manages consent mode, the system Google provides for this, so the blocking is done cleanly. For a potential newsletter, it's even stricter. The sign-up must be voluntary with an unsubscribe link present in every email. We now create the legal pages. Depending on your business, you need 3 or 4 of them. A privacy policy, which explains what data you collect, why, for how long. A cookie policy, terms of use, the rules for using your site, and if you sell online, terms of sale.
Cookie Yes is going to do part of the work for us for 2 of them. In the plugin, I open the policy generator. I first generate the privacy policy. I answer a short questionnaire about the data I collect.
The privacy policy page has been created. I copy the generated content, and I paste it into a dedicated WordPress page in a custom HTML block. That's it for this page. Then the cookie policy, which automatically pulls in the list of cookies detected at the scan. I do the same thing by copying and pasting the code from the generated content onto my page. Edit HTML. Update. For the terms of use and the terms of sale if you sell, CookieYes doesn't generate them. You use a dedicated online generator, an AI, or you write them yourself. Never copy a template without adapting it. The information must match your real business: company name, address, contact details, and business activity. A document full of generic statements won't protect you.
A small practical point. Your theme may have already created empty legal pages, privacy policy, or terms of use. Rather than creating duplicates of them, reuse them directly by pasting your content into them. It saves you 2 identical pages. Only delete the real, useless duplicates. Once the pages are ready, I put them in the footer.
When I go to the footer, I notice the theme has already placed 2 links there that don't belong: how to prep a wall before painting, and work. I remove them and add my real legal pages in their place. If you have a footer menu, select it. Otherwise, create one. Then add your pages. Above all, I don't leave any empty link. A legal link that leads nowhere is worse than no link at all. They don't need to be in the main menu, but they must remain accessible from any page. And while I'm at it, I link my form's consent checkbox to the privacy policy page, whose link was still empty. I save. Before declaring victory, we test. It's simple, but it avoids embarrassing mistakes that visitors won't forgive you for. I review all the pages. I click on all the buttons, and I check that no link lands on an empty page or an old template. I retest the form for real, like at the SMTP step. I send a message, and I check that it arrives properly. I test on mobile, and not only in the WordPress preview, if possible, on a real phone. And I also test the site in private browsing, like a non-logged-in visitor, because logged into WordPress, you don't always see exactly the same thing as the public. And the hunt for the details that betray a sloppy site, demo images left in place, fake contact details. Also, remember to delete WordPress's default content. I also test that the links of the legal pages in the footer land on the right pages. If you don't see your latest changes, such as, for example, these links, make sure to clear your site's cache when you're done. The site is ready. We finally allow its indexing. I go back to Settings, then Reading. Remember the Discourage search engines from indexing this site box that we checked during construction? We uncheck it now. It's the #1 oversight that makes a site totally invisible on Google. I save. I grab the sitemap generated by the SEO extension. The address generally looks like yoursite.com/sitemap_index, XML. Now, we report the site to Google. For that, we go through the Search Console, Google's free tool that helps it discover your pages and shows you how it sees your site. I add my property if it's not done. I verify the domain according to the proposed method. Basically, it's a TXT record that you need to add to your domain's DNS settings. Add. To validate. All right, I've proven that the domain is mine.
Then I submit the sitemap. It doesn't guarantee immediate indexing or a good ranking, but it helps Google cleanly discover all your pages. You can also request manual indexing of the homepage and a few important pages. Then you have to give Google time to crawl and rank your site, because SEO is long-term work. For a tradesperson, there's a free lever at least as powerful as the site: the Google Business Profile. It's what makes you appear in the local pack and on Google Maps when someone searches for painter plus your city. I create or claim my profile, and I fill in the exact name of the company, the activity, the service area, the phone, the hours, and the link to the site we just put online. I add real job site photos like on the work page, and I ask my satisfied customers to leave a review. For local, reviews carry enormous weight. Keep exactly the same contact details everywhere: profile, site, and social media.
Google is very sensitive to this consistency for proximity referencing. A successful site isn't only a beautiful site, it's a site that answers the visitor's questions: what you offer, why trust you, how to reach you. It's readable on mobile, fast, and maintained over time. Keep a sense of priorities. Don't spend 3 days on the color of a button if your main text doesn't clearly explain your offer. Don't put 40 animations if your site lags. It's the concrete details that make all the difference. Show your work. Proof always wins over promise. And above all, start simple, clean, and clear. You'll improve afterward. You'll add articles, you'll round out your work, you'll refine the SEO by following your statistics. A living site that progresses is worth 1,000 times more than a perfect site that never goes out. And there you have it. You now know how to create a complete WordPress site in 2026, from the domain name all the way to your Google business profile, by way of installation, customization with Gutenberg, SEO, the form, speed, security, and GDPR compliance. To get started at LWS, the promo code WP2026 gives you 15% off WordPress hosting. Tell me in the comments what type of site you want to create: brochure, blog, store, restaurant, and the topic I should dig into next: WooCommerce, SEO, AI. If this guide helped you, a like and a subscription, it really counts. See you very soon for a new tutorial.